Sama Al-Hamdani is a Yemeni analyst. She writes her blog, Yemeniyati, as well as for Al Monitor, Brookings, and the Atlantic Council. She joins us from Washington, D.C. Sama, it's good to have you with us. With this, what's going on, the Houthis overrunning more of the country, the president fleeing. The country was in chaos already. Now Saudi Arabia gets involved with these airstrikes. But is this too little, too late to save the Yemeni government that was allied with the United States?
Well, I think, in my opinion, any kind of action that's going to create more trouble on the ground, any kind of warfare, any kind of attacks are not going to result in peace. The situation was already tense. You know, what we had in the north, we had a Houthi militia supported by the former President Saleh, and in the south, we had President Hadi and his allies, and they were kind of clashing between each other. Today, just earlier in the morning, this is DC time, of course, President Hadi was pushed out of Aden. We don't know whether he's fled the country or not for sure, but it's clear that the Houthis have captured Aden, the city that he was in, and now we see that Saudi Arabia has decided to intervene. It's important to note that while the Houthi rebels are, in fact, a militia and are not an official authority and are also allied with former President Saleh, I think that a Saudi airstrike at this time is scaring a lot of people, and it's not going to contribute to any peace. It seems a little bit unnecessary and a little bit rushed. But
clearly the Saudis are concerned, and the other Gulf states are concerned about Iranian influence.
Absolutely.
Because Iran is believed to support the Houthis, who, like Iran, are mostly Shia. The Saudis support President Hadi, who's Sunni. Do you believe this is a greater battle between Saudi Arabia and Iran, or is it mostly a domestic civil war in Yemen?
Well, first of all, let me just clarify that the Houthis are not Iranian agents on Yemeni ground. They are, in fact, Yemenis with their own cause, and they were in Yemen far before the Iranian-Saudi proxy war. So when we talk about the Shia-Sunni war, we're really talking about a Zaydi versus Wahhabi conflict that has been manufactured and pushed into a bigger Shia-Sunni narrative. Having said that, showing support and backing a country up is definitely necessary, and I understand the concern of the GCC countries and their urgent need to see a stable Yemen. Having said that, I think that attacking the military bases at the time being, when they're attacking the Houthi military bases, they're in fact attacking whatever is left of Yemen's national army bases. That means that when they're done, if they are successful in destroying all military bases, Yemen would be left with no military. They would only be left with militias and on-ground fighters, and that is a really, really terrible scenario.
But then all in all, then, what are the consequences here, especially if you look at it from a United States perspective? Because, you know, what does this mean for the fight against al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which is supposed to be the most dangerous arm of al-Qaeda? If it becomes a totally failed state with no armed forces, what happens?
Yeah, well, the thing is, the only people who are actually standing up to al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula militarily right now were the Houthis. And so it seems that Saudi Arabia is attacking the only people who are able of combating militarily al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. On the ground, again, what I'm trying to explain is Yemen has had...
But had the Houthis shown any inclination to fight al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula?
Yeah, they've declared them their enemies, and they've been engaging in warfare for a while. Just a few days ago, ISIS targeted 2 mosques in Yemen that they labeled as Houthi mosques. Of course, these mosques were open to all Yemenis, not just the Houthis, but they were sending a message declaring the Houthis as their enemy in Yemen. So what we're seeing in Yemen on the ground is the emergence of a sectarian conflict that wasn't necessarily there, and it's represented or is being enacted out in warfare between the Houthi group versus al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Besides the sectarian conflict, we had another conflict, which is the Houthi rebel militia or their political office allied with former President Saleh versus the powers of President Hadi. Of course, the GCC has talked several times about only backing President Hadi and him being the only legitimate authority on the ground. Having said that, President Hadi was pushed out. On the ground, if President Hadi is in fact not in Yemen at the moment, them fighting the Houthi rebels means that they destroy the Houthis, but they won't have on-the-ground leader or representation.
And so
they
then
won't
what?
have somebody to support on the ground in Yemen.
So we go back to former President Saleh, who was a strong man who dominated Yemen for years?
You don't have to go back to him. What I'm saying is that there needs to be negotiations.
Right,
the problem with this kind of violence is that...
But would that be the consequence you see?
It's clear that it's becoming very personal. President Saleh doesn't seem to be backing down. A few bloggers and analysts on Twitter have mentioned that the same GCC who's very much opposed to the Houthi presence and Saleh presence in Yemen were the same group that granted him immunity back in 2011. The reason that President Saleh was on the ground and was able to stay in Yemen was because of that immunity deal. And so it seems that things have done a 180. And the problem here, my concern is for the Yemeni people. Again, these are all political players playing on the ground, but the majority of the population is not part of that.
I just want to ask you quickly, because I know your family is still in Sana'a. What are they telling you?
Well, this is exactly why I'm speaking this way. I'm very much aware that a lot of my friends and my family and a lot of people on the ground do not belong to either the Houthi party or Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula or any other faction for that matter. They are just standing back and watching all of this happen. I think these attacks today have created a lot of terror in our hearts and minds to all Yemenis abroad and Yemenis on there too on the ground. When I spoke to them, they reported hearing gunfire in the middle of the night. It's 3 a.m. over there, and they woke up to sounds of strikes, and it's very scary to be there on the ground. I can imagine, to just sit back and just hear, clashes near you. You never know whether that's actually going to hit you or not. It's very terrifying, and Yemen has had a very bloody week this week, and so I think Yemenis are just waiting to see stability and the stop of bloodshed everywhere.
Yeah, it must be a very frightening time for them. Al-Hamdani, it's good of you to join us and bring us your perspective. Thank you. Still ahead.